Our first speaker today is Rob Johnston, who is a graduate of Aiken High School and also USC Aiken with a BA in business and also an MBA. He followed college with a stint in the U.S. Air Force, where he attained the rank of captain. He worked for 6 years as a real estate officer at Citizens and Southern's National Bank in Atlanta. Then he founded First Communities Management, one of the largest privately owned management and ownership companies in the country, specializing in multifamily units. He has been president of many job-related organizations, including the Atlanta Apartment Association, Georgia Apartment Association, National Apartment Association. You can see he worked his way up. The East Lake Foundation Board and the Whitney Trust Board. He has been vice chairman of the PGA Tour Championship between 1998 and 2003, and he served as general chairman from 2003 to 2017. This is one busy man. In Atlanta, he organized the first Atlanta apartment industry food drive in 1978, which benefited the Atlanta Community Food Bank. That is the largest private food drive in the United States. In Aiken, Rob has been involved in the Aiken Land Conservancy, Children's Place, the Friends of Copelands and Rye Patch, the Hitchcock Woods Foundation, Joanne Aiken, the Kistner Foundation, St. Mary's Church, and others. In 2017, just 6 years ago, Rob founded Aiken Streetscapes to save, protect, and preserve the grand trees of Aiken. Now, before he takes before he stands up and gives his part of the program, let me also introduce Dacre, who will follow him. Dacre is the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker, author of Dracula. And he is the international best-selling co-author of Dracula the Undead and Dracul, a prequel to Dracula. Dacre first came to Aiken in 1977 when his parents bought a winter home here. He moved to Aiken full-time in 92 with his wife, Janice. Is that how I say it?
Yep.
Good. They live on Kershaw Street. He has been very active in the community, having served for 12 years on the board of the Hitchcock Woods Foundation, where he is now a board member emeritus. Dacre served on the board of the Aiken Land Conservancy for 5 years before becoming its first executive director from 2008 to 2010. In this capacity, he also served on the City of Aiken's Environmental Committee. He is presently the executive director of Aiken Streetscapes, a private foundation dedicated to the care and preservation of Aiken's grand trees. In his free time, he enjoys hiking and fly fishing in North Carolina, and when time permits, in Montana, Wyoming, or British Columbia, Canada. So, thank you both for being here, and now I'll turn the program over to Rob.
Thank you. Can everyone in the back hear me? I generally have a big mouth, so hopefully I'll project. But I'm honored to be here today. Dacre, thank you for being with us. Kathy, I've known her since junior high school. And next Sunday is the funniest things I've ever seen about Kathy Huff Cunningham. That we have done a program. But I am honored to be here. I love it. I'm here because I love it. I moved here with my parents in 1953 at the nuclear plant coming on board. My dad was an engineer. I don't know if Lucy can do my dad hair down there. He was out there 30 or 40 years. But as a first grader at St. Mary's, I soon had some kind of unexplained appreciation for the trees in the forest. And he'd say it now, we would ride our bikes to Hitchcock Woods. I don't know if it was legal or not, but I just had this fascination and appreciation for how unique. We came from Savannah. I had never seen a pine tree. It was all live oaks down there. I really had never seen a magnolia. But I just loved Aiken, and as I rode my bike to St. Mary's, I had to go down 2 Knife Road and hit southbound and come around. And it was almost like riding your bike or walking in a cathedral. I felt there was some mystical appeal, power that this urban forest had. And every year, I think I just increased my devotion to it. and essentially never questioned how it started. Who put it there? Who took care of it? Why did they do it? And as I went off to Columbia for undergrad and grad, I have to say, those thoughts escaped me. I was in the other things at that time. And I moved to Atlanta. And it started dawning on me after being in Atlanta, the way they develop, they take every darn street down and then put back what they want. There is no respect, no appreciation for the longevity and history of any kind of forest or tree. Atlanta can wear on you, and Pam and I were there from 98 to 2006. And my dad had a series of health issues. I was coming back more and more, and more came back. It's very evident to see Atlanta was no Aiken. Never would be. So when we came back, we went to the house on South Boundary that I rode by so often before, and it was pink. It was, I don't know if you remember, it was pink at that time. That's a lot of exaggeration. And as we moved in, it looked pretty much the same until occasionally, about every couple of months, I'd hear this tremendous crash, and one of those giant trees that fall. And I thought, well, what the heck? I just moved back here, and I think I lost count at like 10 or 15 of these magic live oaks that had crashed, whether it was on Newberry or Chesterfield or the historic district. Hayne Avenue, the appearance of Hayne Avenue in the 50s is nothing like it is today. I'll just say that. Victim of ice storms and neglect and no plan. That's what happened. So as these trees fell, I started talking to Pam about, I wonder what the plan is for replacement, for nurturing, or who put them there. So I started thinking about what to do, and Margaret Shealy was leading a cause to save Maid Mary. For those of you who may not know, that was the grand tree. I think it was on probably Ori. I was just and the tree was eminently in decline. So he wanted to take it down. So we gave a little money to her. She was going to have to save the tree. And I went over there to look at the tree. Do y'all remember looking at Maid Mary before it fell? I mean, thinking about it now, it's just shocking. We knew better. But one of the issues with live oaks is they grow lateral branches so big and so heavy, it puts stress on the trunk. And these little fissures start. And once they start getting a little cracked, disease gets into it. It's hard to uncorrect that. But what the city's approach was, carve out the dead part of the tree, pour in concrete. That's how it's secure. You think that worked, Bob? No. That hastened the death. I thought, well, how could that go against protocol or a plan? So I kept chewing on that and thinking about that. So I went to the city and I said, what are you going to do about Maid Mary? Gone. Probably 125, 150 years old. They wouldn't have a replacement. That boy. Right answer. Well, there was. Were any of y'all out there at the replacement ceremony? He's still out there. It was about 5 feet tall and 2 inches wide. That was the idea of a replacement. Then I asked them, well, what happened in the past as the parkways? You know, our parkways are unique. I think 176. The architect surveyor went to the Jeffersonian School of Architecture, and that's why this is very Jeffersonian, how everything's perpendicular, and why the parkways are so wide. This is an interesting fact. They're so wide because they had to be wide enough for a team and 4 horses pulling a cart to make it turn around and come back the other way. So there's an awful lot of history, and I asked them, well, what have you done to protect it? You know what? Every tree that goes, we plant a break mark. You think the city would ever be known for a giant grove of crepe myrtles? So something really had to be done. So I talked to Dacre about it. Dake's been my best pal here with Dacre for a long time. And boy, he is everything I'm not. He's organized, he's structured, he's a teacher, he's a professor, and he has that down cold. And I said, we ought to just see if we can find the genesis of this. And he unearthed some pictures of historic history and South Boundary back in the late 1880s and 1890s. There were no trees. It was all cotton and beans. I mean, it looked like, well, I would say, it'd be derogatory, sort of, I know. It just looked somewhat way out in the country that was nothing. And what we further found out, Lucy, you know some additional, I appreciate it. I talked to Sarah Ward, her grandmother, and she doesn't know. But around 1905, when Julian Sally was proposing to Eula, they were invited out to the Vale of Montmorency, I think. And Aiken County still lives there. But it had a kind of like a freezer style, and they had ice cream. So he took his girlfriend out to get ice cream. And Mr. Dibble's house, he said, you know, Julian, I go by horse and buggy from Montmorency to Aiken, he's president of the bank down in London. He said, the scene's awful. How about we plant some trees and get something going? And he was the mayor at the time, Julian. He said, you know, Mr. Dibble, there's about $400 left off in the budget. And if you match it, we'll start the program. And that was the gym. All those streets on South Boundary and the historic district came down from Barnhole near the river. And they were transplanted up in here, all in about a 2 or 3 year period. How they watered them, I have no idea. But from that, they were about 10 to 14 feet. That's the ideal size to replace any bigger than work. A lot smaller, we're not really long enough to even see it. So they came upon this wondrous plan. And then Mrs. Sally then took it upon herself to plant a lot of the magnolias on all parts of it. And from what I understand, the Aiken Garden Club was funded by the city and were very active in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And the last thing I've seen in the minutes was that it ceased to exist in that form back in 1960. And you know what the landscape plan has been since 1960? Nothing. Nothing. So do we sit there and accept that, or do we try to do something about it? So Dave and I said it would be a worthwhile venture to understand what is the problem, right? And we went to the mayor. They were very accommodating. They were broke, but they were very accommodating. And there was no help offered. Right? It's not going to stop us. So I knew from first-hand experience a company named Bartlett Tree Service, they're national, but they're nationally recognized as one of the premier arborists in the country. And we decided the only way to know what to do is to figure out what we had. So we commissioned them to do an exhaustive study of 26,000 trees in Aiken. They GPSed it, assessed its health, reports them out like this. I said, wow. So I went to back to the mayor, and I said, this is what you have, sir. This is your city. What are we going to do about it? And it was very disappointing to read this on what could have been prevented. And we are going to lose a lot more trees. We've turned some of it around. And basically, they identified trees that were dead that had to go out, trees that would not make it, trees that could make it if we got on them, and ones that were still healthy. But they all needed the deep root treatment, very deep. Second thing they did is to prevent these limbs from growing so wondrous and cracking the trunk. They need to be judiciously pruned. Not whack, like you see the power companies come through some of the parkways. You know, the idea of pruning was to drill a 12-foot hole through a tree, so power line. So, understanding all that, I called Bartlett myself, and I said, we had 3 really nice live oaks on South Boundary. Bring your report out. And I didn't tell them what for. And they came out with that report, and I said, I'd like to see the assessment on these 3 trees. GPS. About 10 minutes ago, oh, you get 3 trees right here. You got to keep that rot in the trunk and separation. You need a pruning, but you can extend the life 50 or 75 years with deep rooted treating and pruning. I called the mayor back. I said, Mayor, we have figured out, and the company to do it, to prolong the vitality of these trees. And I'll be the guinea pig. I'll pay Bartlett to do these are your trees. They're right. I said, I'll pay for it. I'm going to see what they did. So I took a couple of days off in Atlanta. And I just wasn't prepared for that. I was thinking somebody with a chainsaw machine would come up there and start packing them. They were assessing everything for all these instruments. They had ladders and hard helmets on and pulleys and ropes. What do they do? And I watched them for about 3 days. And when they got finished, I could hardly see they had done anything. You know, they were like naked, limbs cut off and the thing. It looked different, but same. That's the right analogy. And I said, how did you do this? He said, we have years of study. We do this all over the country, but much more so the Southeast. And we have found once a tree is over 75 years of age, 23% of the branches need to be pruned. I mean, it was that technical, that specific, and it was all 26,000 trees were evaluated to that extent. Well, now we know the problem, right? So he got back to talk again, and I said, we need to create a foundation to do something. Call Kathy. Where are you, Kathy? Yeah, he was the first one to give me the backbone to start the foundation, legally, tax-wise, etc. So that's how we started. Aiken Streetscapes. Just a name I came up with. So everybody's asking, where did the logo come from? If you look at it, it's the Wimbledon tennis logo. I had to come up with it in a weekend. So the report essentially said it was $10 million of immediate work needed. That's kind of gets stuck with right back. All the city-owned property and the right of way. And it could go on and on for a long time. As we were getting the foundation started, it was very apparent that they loved the idea, but was very reluctant to participate. So we funded the foundation to get it started. And the mayor announced it in March of 17th, that's 6 years ago next week. And one of the problems we first encountered were the power lines. And South Carolina Electric and Gas and Dominion have a right of easement for their power lines, which is 8 feet circumference.
8 and 14, depending on the level.
Yeah, 14 from the ground. But if the hole to get the power line through was this, they wanted 8 feet. By state heat, it was horrific. So we said, stop, let's figure out what we're going to do. And we talked to Dominion. They were in a switchover from SEG. And they said the only cure is underground, the power. If I had known the pandemic was coming. So, long story short, the undergrounding of those power lines has started. It's essentially complete from Orangeburg down to Whiskey Road. It's going to go down past Wilcox, Chesterfield, Newberry, Lawrence, and as all that gets done, the goal is to hit every zip code. Every zip code. The biggest street, Aiken, is in a disadvantaged area. Is it on Greenville? On Greenville, the biggest street, Aiken. And it's desperately needs care. So, the mayor, and then finally, after we had run this process for a couple of years, and we were trimming in other areas of the district, the city said, no, this is good. And this started out as public-private. Back to the story, right? 1905. The city said, we'll match you dollar for dollar for $250,000 a year to do something. So 500 is better than a punch in the eye, right? Mm-hmm. So we started that process with the city, and I have to say the city is fantastic. Lex.
Kirkland.
Yeah, Lex we have such great people to work with. They got the fever so bad, they wanted to do it quicker. So now, they have 2 big trucks equipped with booms and crews that the city is now trimming. Some of it's been farmed out to Collins, and Bartlett is going to finish a high profile where the sensitivity of these trees are. So we are up and running. The city has gone along with the plan to perpetuate this. Do I think we can address every tree? No. I don't. I wish to say we could. But I know for a fact we're a lot better off now than we would have been. The process starting when I moved back here in 2007, 8 was just horrific. And we have agreement now on what kind of grand tree gets to be replaced, the size of it, who's going to do it. And as Dominion proceeds along with this underground, maybe in 10 years, we'll be able to proclaim and have an Aiken that all of us love. See you best. You love Aiken as much as anybody ever met. But we're going to restore this forest as it was that we all loved in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I'm going to ask Dacre to come up. We would be nowhere along this path without Dacre. Dacre has been the ones that's taken this gigantic report and given the city, well, bite-sized nibbles so they don't get sick all at one time. But he's just a genius at this, taking this big, disorganized chaos and putting it into a workable plan that all of us can benefit. So thank y'all for your time. We'll answer any questions that you might have, but yes, ma'am.
Did you say that Colleton is one of the streets that welcome to the underground wiring on?
Are they going to do more additional undergrounding?
On Colleton?
That's the plan.
What worries me is, first of all, it's supposed to be the city arboretum. And I live on Colleton. The little signs, a lot of them have been knocked down. The only thing the city has increased by way of care there is how often the street sweeper runs now, suddenly. And traffic, the speed of traffic is increased. And the problem I see for that is that our old trees have these big roots that come out and make bumps in the road. And I'm worried about what the city thinks they're going to do about that. Because if they cut those big old roots, they're going to harm the trees.
If they take those roots, they can take my leg. That's not happening.
What can they do that would help?
The only answer long term is the underground. That is the only thing.
They can avoid, just to jump in if I may, they can avoid roots with this underground.
Yeah.
The ones that are in the.
Yeah, Rob, can I jump in?
Please.
Okay. So that's one of the problems, and if you would just hold that question until we get to the slides, you're going to notice I'm very visual. So that everything that Rob has just told you, we're going to replay with some visuals to this. All right, and that is one of the biggest problems facing the trees we deal with. And besides Lex Kirkland is Aaron Campbell, who is, his all our hearts in the right place. And the fact that Rob jumped in and sort of faced them and said, look, we're going to do this, only if you match me. So when he puts up his generosity, his money, and they got a match, now that we're getting someplace. And they've also realized that Rob is serious, that kind of shamed them into things. And plus, Lex doesn't like to spend our tax money unnecessarily. He doesn't like actually when we have to cut a check to Bartlett, because they're so good, they're a little more expensive than some of the other more discount guys they can get. But Rob and I say, no, when it comes to South Boundary, we're using Bartlett, because these trees demand that kind of precision. But they did go out and buy their own second crew, and they had these crews being trained. And as a matter of fact, Collins is actually getting better. I don't work for Collins. But the nice thing is they're doing more things in-house because of the standard that Rob has set. But there are challenges. And the challenges are balancing the needs of the trees to the needs of the people in this city. And there's safety involved, there's transportation involved, there's telecommunications, there's power involved. So we have to, this is a balance. And it's very expensive to underground, as we'll see in just a moment. So this is the iconic site that Rob was talking about, just a couple of blocks down from where he lives, and the 3 test trees that he used in his example. He also didn't tell you that he funded that very expensive study with the city. And it was, again, putting his money where his mouth is. We're going to show you all the trees, city-owned trees, not the trees that we own in our yards. That's a whole nother issue, folks. This is city-owned trees that are on rights-of-ways on parcels. This is our mission statement. And this is how Rob loves to follow in the line of people who have come before us, who've been very generous, who've set the tone that we're enjoying today. So for 125 years, Aiken has been renowned for its dedication and preservation of our glorious parks, magnificent trees, and beautiful parkways. It is our responsibility to protect and preserve for future generations what's been given to us. That sums up our mission, sums up Rob's heart and Pam's heart. So I'm not asking you for money today, relax, okay? We don't even take money. The Aiken Land Conservancy is our body that takes donations, and people are beginning to give money to them, and they're partnering with us. Because now we've got two public-private entities to connect with the city, which is great. People can get deductions with them as well. Now, if you've heard of something called Tree City, we can be proud. Even before Rob and I came along, they were recognized as a Tree City. What does that mean? That there is a department within the city that looks after trees. There is a committee that discusses this stuff. There is money to do it. But we've all just heard it's not enough. It's not enough for the incredible trees that we have here. But we're on the right track. They just need a shot in the arm and a couple of guys to look over their shoulder and say, by the way, why don't you do this? Or we can help you do this. What is the benefit of trees? Now, we know they look wonderful, but there is economic benefits to having trees. Otherwise, people who moan and groan about the odd branch coming down and taking out their fence or landing on their car, those folks would always prevail. But if you look at this, the trees help absorb the sound of traffic in urban areas by 40%. Neighborhoods with trees are 7 to 9 degrees cooler than those without. That's going to help all of our air conditioning bills. Trees reduce energy costs up to 25% by shading buildings and protecting them from winter winds. And boy, has our climate changed. I don't care who you're talking to, what political party, we have changed. We've got higher winds, we've got more rains, we've got trees, roots that get soggy. We've got issues that these trees have not been used to dealing with, and we've got to help them. Homes with trees have higher property values. Green space plays a major role in improving mental and physical health. Planting and maintaining trees absorb carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, mitigating the effects of climate change. And we need that more than we ever have. This is a shock. This is what Park Avenue looked like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. If you look closely, you'll actually see that there were the beginnings of trees being planted on Park. And these are the little cylinders that hold them up and direct some heat to them so they can grow. This is what Rob was talking about, what the city used to look like. And look at what we have now. It's because people are really interested to protect and to preserve. Look at downtown Aiken around the same period of time. That's Lawrence Street. That's the corner of Lawrence and Lawrence and Park. Isn't it incredible where we've come? It's also sobering of what will happen if we don't deal and help these trees. The Wilcox, wonderful, the building's looking great, but you probably don't see many trees around it. And sometimes, unfortunately, the trees get to grow without the pruning, as Rob talked about. And when that happens, further problems happen, like they grow too long and they crack and they get diseased. And then the whole thing has to come down. So if we can get out ahead of this with this pruning program that we're talking about, then the trees have a better chance. Now, certainly at a point, downtown Lawrence did grow some trees. But I'll tell you something very interesting. Look very carefully at what's parked below the trees. It's not the cars. It's horse and carriage. There's an article on our website, AikenStreetscapes.org. A wonderful article from 1912 that actually explains the problems that these trees were faced back then. And it's people connecting, harnessing their horse to the trees and the horse eating the bark. So the problems haven't changed that much because if you park a car there, just as this lady mentioned, cars either on dirt roads or when people park in the parkways called root compression, you push down the roots, no nutrients can get through the dirt, and then those roots suffer. So it's the same sort of problems, just different vehicles. Look at South Boundary. This is what Rob was talking about. The wonderful story about Henry Dibble and Julian Sally. It's fantastic, and you'll see the next slide where it came from. If you look really closely next time you drive down South Boundary, you'll notice that it was actually 2 lanes with a row of live oaks in between because of the carriages. And you can still see some of that a little bit farther down in the Williamsburg area. You can see why people's right-of-ways are so big like they have their parking lots. This was a really iconic, interesting part of Aiken. And dragging these trees with mule team from the Savannah River to transplant them, what a huge endeavor. So hats off to folks that helped do. Thank you to Mayor Julian Sally. And as he was courting Yulee Sally, and Henry Dibble. This is the genesis of it all, written in this book by Don Bosman. It's local. If you want to learn more, you can get a hold of these books and learn some of the wonderful history. And this is what we have today. And that's what we're trying to preserve. But not just South Boundary. Our mission is all throughout Aiken. We'll get to that in just a minute. Here is the inventory. And I won't read you everything on here, but just look at some of this. It was reported in the Aiken Standard in 2018. That when these 23,000 trees were evaluated and inventoried by Bartlett, they looked at, and I don't really understand the way tree guys figure out what it's worth, because it has to do with increasing property values as well, not just if you cut the tree down, what's the wood worth. But these trees worth $130 million. One of Aiken's biggest assets if you analyze it that way. So they presented the inventory, city's trees, and provided the city with a management plan. So inventory is great, but what are you going to do with these trees? They looked at 3 areas: our parkways, of which there are 249, city-owned parcels, and rights-of-ways, large land masses, forest area, basically, were all studied. Hopeland Gardens, these places, not just along the street. This is one of the best places for our trees to thrive. Why? Because cars don't drive through it very much. There's also Pine Lawn Cemetery, which is not owned by the city. But if you really want to see some incredible trees that we have contributed money for to help them be pruned properly, go take a look at Pine Lawn Cemetery. No cars drive through there. No power lines drive through. You'll see some fantastic specimens. Now we get to what Rob found, what we discovered in this survey. In the parkways, over 10,000 trees, 375 different species. The trees cover 169.9 acres. Pollution removal, well, you can see the numbers. In the special parcels, over 7,937 trees, 204 species. Look at the number of species we have. Rights of ways, over 94 different species. And the Arboretum Trail that this lady mentioned, which is wonderful. And I do know we're not responsible for the little signs, so it's not our problem, but it is our problem. We want people to be able to read the little signs, they can see the different trees, look at the Q codes. And I know Aaron has been busting himself to try to figure out how to get these signs to work best. Because let's be honest, when guys go in there with the lawnmowers, the guys go in there with the weed whackers, they don't think like we do. And they just got to cut everything. And then these signs go flying. Oh, so we just nail it into the tree. That's not so good to nail it into the tree. So they're working on something. It's not a perfect solution, but it is a work in progress. And they really value this arboretum, so people can go and see it. And Bob McCartney, bless his heart, has done incredible things by introducing incredible number of species of oaks from all over the world. Not just to the Arboretum Trail, but up the train tracks as well, all over Aiken. It's really, what we have is incredible. We have actually offered to pay for the inventory of this arboretum beyond the existing arboretum, so that it can be recorded on the city's website. People apparently, Bob tells me, come from all over the world to look at the different types of oak trees that he's brought in from all over the world. And we don't have a public archive of these things. It's all here in Bob's head or a notepad. We need to get that onto the notepad, and we have offered to fund that. I love the way that Aiken, City of Aiken, and tourism touts this. It's fantastic. And finally, now they're also putting their money where their mouth is. This gets lots of publicity. Southern Living and this wonderful, wonderful plaque as well. So this is the public-private partnership that Rob's trying to encourage. And we're really excited that the Land Conservancy has jumped on board with us. It's really the way to make things like this happen. It's easy for us to complain about the city not using our tax money for this or that. But when people can, and they can get on board and go to the city and say, I'm willing to help, and I'll put this money here, I'll put our expertise here, will you do the same? It's incredible what they will do. They're really great people to work with. When you sit down with them, and everything is transparent, and Aaron knows what's gotta be in his budget. He calls me, you match it, yep, let's sit down. Where are we moving now? Well, we've got the South Boundary project in place, we've got Colleton done, we've got Park done, and now we're moving into downtown. And if you see a Collins truck around, or you see the 2 city trucks, that's all of our tax money as well as the public-private partnership working. It's nice that this gets recognized in USA Today. It really is. It makes us feel good that our dollars and your dollars are going to work. The spectacular old avenue of live oaks arching above South Boundary Avenue gives Aiken's beauty bragging rights all over its neighbors. Along South Boundary, horse farms thrive as they have for 100 years, and historic homes harken back to post-Civil War winter colony era. Isn't that nice? That's preservation. Keeping things the way that they were, but better than they were even before that, as you saw the pictures earlier. But here's some of the challenges. There's always challenges. And I just want to let you know in the next few slides of what we all are dealing with. The roadways, we have to drive on roads, and you see all the people that complain about dirt roads. I don't want the dirt, they're too bumpy. My fencing, Mercedes, or this, it's going to lose the shot. I want paved roads. You paved roads, we've got water runoff issues. You got to control that. And just as this lady mentioned on Colton Avenue, the trees don't really like to adhere to paved roads because those roots are growing out and they'll grow up and they make big bumps in the road. In a funny way, I kind of like those bumps. Why? It slows down those drivers on Colton Avenue. Because I live on Colton and Kershaw Colton, so it does slow them down. My grandson loves it on his little bicycle because he thinks it's a good little bump to go over. And we need power. But as Rob said, there is a state mandate. You just don't blame the city for everything. The state mandate, depending on the amount of power that goes through these lines, either 12 or 14 feet around, they can cut down the thing. Why is that? Well, let's just harken back to the latest ice storm and how people really suffer in really bad ways when there's no power. So we've got to come up with solutions. The problem is, when you look back at Aiken, we had the trees before all the power lines, right? So when the power lines went in, okay, if they can avoid a tree, they will. And sometimes, again, pointing at you because you're a neighbor, but down Colleton, there are places where you see the power lines do go like this down the parkways. Sometimes the power lines went in when there was absolutely no trees, but then people planted trees, and even some of us plant our own trees right on the power line and don't realize how tall they're going to go in 20, 30 years. And oh my God, they look terrible when they get cut down. Intense storms. Obviously, increased winds that we're dealing with, infestation and aging. Sadly, folks, you can see right here, these old guys, they do age. And they do, like our fingernails and like our hair, they need to be cut off. They need to be pruned every now and then. Just think, it's a living organism. We need to keep them healthy. We'll see some other close-ups. This is when Bartlett was out doing work and they noticed that a tree came down. My gosh, look what's the inside. And you can't tell that when you do an evaluation. There is incredibly expensive MRI for a tree that they actually have done in Hope Gardens on the beautiful big Deodora cedar near the Hall of Fame, to see what's going on the inside. And when they do, they can say, oh, geez, we got to take down this branch otherwise because the trunk is not strong enough to support it. And we all get sad and emotional when a tree comes down. But being proactive and doing what they can do to trim takes some of the stress off those trunks. Here's the other sad story. DOT, not our city boys again. The DOT comes in, barely even tells Lex Kirkland and Aaron Campbell what's happening. But just last spring, they drove down Audubon. On the left is the Aiken Horse Park. You can see some trailers there. All right, they drove down here, and they turned up. This is their least expensive way of doing things when they take lowest bidder. They take one of those massive weed whacker machines, bush hogs, turn it up this way and go right down Audubon. That's not particularly healthy for these trees when you see how they're left cut out. And it's like, it drives me crazy and Rob, but Lex and Aaron's like, oh God. We get so many phone calls because they think we did it. We go and try to prune that to fix it up, and people stop and go, why do you guys do that? It's not us. It's DOT. That does happen, unfortunately, but now you're a little more informed. This is the other thing that happens. State mandate, this is what Rob was talking about. This is down Marion Extension, and before on the left. And I put that red wedge there. Now, luckily, there's a fellow that was selling one of the houses on here, and he came to me and said, well, I can't let that happen again. I'm going to pledge to pay for undergrounding after what Rob's initiation started on South Boundary. The new owner who bought the property in there has said, I'll contribute to that as well. So hopefully this is the last time you see this utility cut butcher job on this poor oak trees here. Here's another, this is what they begin to look like after a while. And it is sad, if we can underground, it's not cheap. What Rob was talking about, our contribution was $175,000 for half of South Boundary. So we'll be paying the other half. The city contributes their half of that as well. So we're talking $500,000, money well spent, to underground on South Boundary. And then we can start pruning those trees properly and not worrying about utility cuts on those trees. That's the good news. This is, again, what this lady was talking about on the sidewalks. The trees don't really pay much attention to sidewalks, and they make those sidewalks upheave a little bit. And then here's the strangest one, and I got the name of the road wrong. It's not Williamsburg, it's Marlborough. So if you go up Carlton and hang a left on Marlborough, the state also has a rule of 14 feet from the bottom of the road surface to the lowest tree that can hang down. Why? Because we allow trucks on those roads up 14 feet. And some of the trucks these days, especially driving in this area, follow rigs. Some of them have a dish on the top for whatever, TV or Wi-Fi or whatever. Some of them have air conditioning units. And look what happens. That's a piece of aluminum embedded into this poor old tree. And you can see the one on the left, it's the same one. It's a big old scar, but this is tree sitting. Aaron calls it tree pruning. Not happy about it, but what they have to do to remedy it is prune above so that the tree branches will grow up and look for the sun. That's the only way to kind of keep a branch from going down with its weight and hit that 14 feet, and that's like a kiss of death for that poor branch. Because the state doesn't look at things like Rob and I do. 14 feet come down. We're trying to do what we can to keep them up. Here's one of the cool things that they're doing, and we've contributed considerable money for this, which is as the trees come down, remember he talked about their earlier plan about putting out not so wonderful trees when they take down one? They now got a greenhouse, and they're taking acorns and cuttings from the big trees they take down. This goes way back to the Margaret Sheedy Maid Marian issue, is they're able to propagate some of the cuttings from the trees that do come down and the desirable trees we have. And this is in the back of the city's property on whatever street that is. Bill Tucker, you would help me. The public safety, not public safety, public works. DuPont Street, thank you. So we paid for this. They're now growing little seedlings, so we'll be able to propagate from within the relatives of these grand trees.
Dacre, right out in our backyard, this direction on the museum grounds, we have a seedling that's growing from these areas.
Awesome. That's great. Good. Keep it going. Well, hopefully some of our other trees will be able, and we're not just talking live oaks, we're talking deodar cedars, talking other oak trees, longleaf pines, magnolias. As Rob said, we can't do all of them, but we've kind of decided we're going to do the best we can with the grand trees. You guys can work on some of the other ones. Here's the team. Obviously, during COVID, when we started, and the Bartlett guys came in, they came in with 10 crews from all over the Southeast for 2 days. And they'll be doing that again as soon as they can get their folks. And unfortunately, the growing season to finish the job on South Boundary is the fall. The pruning season, excuse me. They want to stop after summer, and then around into September, October, that's when you'll see these come back and do this sort of thing. That's exactly what Rob was talking about. But this is half of all these guys with their ropes and their pulleys and their walkie-talkies. Yeah, cut that one, oh, moves 2 inches this way. It's incredible the surgical precision that these guys do. And this is that, doesn't look beautiful, but these are the green boxes we're going to see. And we're going to have to put up with something. Now, the city said, yeah, we can landscape around that. We can put some bushes up eventually. So when you see these, please don't complain too much about it because it's saving the tree. It is at least not the best thing to have. So here's back to Aaron, who is his aim, the city's aim is to strike the balance between aesthetic, health of the tree, and safety to the people and property. We cannot just err on the side of the tree only, otherwise we'll get everybody else to move out of town. But we have to balance. Maintaining the city's health as an urban forest, expensive, work intensive, something the Bartlett study acknowledges and provides answers for. That was the first step. Now it's not guesswork, it's very scientific. The study advises the city to perform risk mitigation activities on the trees. That's called proactive pruning. Let's go out to these trees and figure out how to keep them alive longer, prune what we need to. It also, as I said, calls for the pruning of 8,855 trees. And as Rob also mentioned, some of this root work as well, right here. What they do is with an air spade, not cutting anything, they're going deep in the ground with air and then putting in new trees. And what the air also does is loosen up the earth from people driving on it or just compacts it from over time. If you have a chance to drive through the Horse District, this is one of the interesting ironies. I'm not sure, Dick, if you were on the board at the time, but the dirt roads in the Horse District desperately needed work. It was a real problem with washing out and everything else. So the city came and put a lot of money, even though they're state roads. We got permission from the state to fix these roads and put sort of a can tube so the water would go out. But what they did was they raised the roads about 6 inches. That was the kiss of death to guess who? All these guys. So it was like, can you measure from the edge of the road, not the middle? So we had a lot of heavy-duty meetings, and we had to do some pruning. If you go by now, it's all nice, and sort of the fresh pruning is gone. And they cut on this side, as you can see, the Whitney Trust property, so that the trees would grow up with the light. So they, obviously, Aaron Campbell and Bartlett, these guys have the know-how. They just need the money and the incentive from people like us to help them do it right. Go visit Hopelands when you have a chance, if you haven't already, but I'm probably preaching to the choir. The choir practice is nice every now and then. This is the most valuable tree in the city. Again, I told you, I'm not exactly sure how they come up with them now, but that one right near the entrance to the Hall of Fame is just to the right, $70,000, Hopeland Gardens. The tree that Rob was talking about on Greenville is the largest and most expensive live oak. That's in the $65,000 range. Incredible how beautiful these trees are. And now that you know more about them, it's not just price. It's the life they've led and what we can do to really keep them going. This is one of the incredible limbs, and the city has used money to put cables to keep it up. Cabling and lightning rods are also very important for these wonderful trees. The biggest loblolly is right there in Hopeland Gardens. Again, this is one of these parcels that we contribute money to help. I'm getting to the end here. So I always love to say, what can you do? We're all buddies over at Rob's on the board of Land Conservancy now. They have this on their website. So if you are in the position of owning nice trees on your property, I seriously consider having them looked at. It doesn't have to be Bartlett. It could be Collins or somebody else. I'm not sure all the different elm or oak, but take a look at pruning and make sure if you're going to plant well away from the power line so you don't get disappointed when they come by state mandate do one of these utility cuts. But we do like trees to give us shade and so on, but we don't want them to fall down on the house. So plant them smart, be smart about where you put your trees and you can enjoy them for many years. And sort of in closing, sort of a similar picture that we started with, these are the bodies involved, and we really are thankful that the city has risen to the occasion. The Land Trust, Land Conservancy has followed with us. And here's my ending note. If the heat bothers you, plant a tree. If the drought bothers you, plant a tree. If you like fruits, plant a tree. If you like birds and insects, plant a tree. And if you like life, plant a tree. And if you like your trees in Aiken, then take care of them and preserve them. Any questions, folks? To either of us? Yes, Dr. Lee. Yes, the humps in the road.
I didn't understand how underground is going to help with humps along the hallway. And another reason, not just because we're afraid that we'll cut through them on the trees, but, and this particularly escalated during COVID, Colton is a walking loop from the Bill Cox down to Charleston and back. And we don't have sidewalks anywhere except a few isolated places. We could walk in the street, and of course we could walk out around the big bumps in the road, which we love. And the cars begin to be, first of all, rare than we used to experience, and the speeds are increasing. And I was wondering if, in the grand scheme of preserving trees, there's a possibility of considering the walking aspect, like making connected to the Arboretum program and, putting in some sort of intervention strategy that would provide for walking.
Okay, so the first question was, how would undergrounding the power lines help with the roots growing and making the humps? It wouldn't at all. What the undergrounding would do would simply mean that we could remove the power lines and have the power lines go underground. And the way they do that is what took them so long during COVID, and the teams that come in, is they have ground boring teams that come in and they sort of move along. And the point is, if they hit roots, they then go around them. So I guess I misunderstood you. The undergrounding that's planned for parts of Colleton would have nothing to do with fixing your bumps. I'm sorry. The bumps is a tolerance that the city has to figure out about, will they leave those bumps there and not take out the tree? That's your biggest concern, right? Is if they see bumps, will they take out the tree because they don't want cars to go over that? And that answer, I don't know. I do know that Aaron has a calculation when he looks at cutting down trees. All right? He looks at a tree, and number one, he looks at the angle of the tree. And he actually has one of those levelers, big ones, industrial. And he says, oh, it's got to be more than 17%. Because Rob and I pointed out a couple to him. What about that one over there when we've had our meetings? Nope, it's not there yet. Now there was one, a long leaf, right by the old post office. And Todd Lista, who still owns it, but rents it, came to me and says, Dacre, that thing's going to come out. I know that I'm into conservation like you are, but if that thing falls, that's going to break the windows and do all this. So there was this assessment of the angle, the property value, could they prune it? Well, Aaron kept it going, kept that tree alive for 2 more years by pruning it, and then finally, so many rains came, and it shifted with the ground being saturated that they had to take it out. And it was calculated and it did have some bumps in the road there, right in front of the post office. There's a calculation on property damage liability. Again, I'm not answering your question, but I'm giving you an opinion. Right now, and I live here too, and I walk up there, or I power walk or take grandkids, there's so many people that walk on it. If you put a sidewalk in, you're going to hurt these tree roots even more.
Oh, we don't want sidewalks.
You know what? You've already got enough people walking here and leaving their dog poop that I actually went to them and made sure they gave 2 stations. I'm getting off the subject, but I'm an avid walker, as I'm sure you are too. And I don't know if there really is anything to do, because you just want to hope that they will not indiscriminately, and that's where we come in, cut a tree down because it's making root bumps on the road. That's the bottom line.
Dacre, who in the city or the state would know how to correct the bump problem without harming the tree?
That's Kirkland and Aaron Campbell. That's your city public works and your horticulture. So those are the guys who would come and look at this thing. Rob and Bob.
I take your suggestion very seriously. I have seen the same issue. We will pay for a petition department to come in and do an independent study. I know they've had some success in the past removing some roots that are critical to the tree's lifespan. That would take it off, seal it properly, go back over the page. But we'll have Bartlett specifically look at that. But what I cannot answer you is, I get a mixed message talking to city officials, whether that's an Aiken-owned road or a state-owned road. And that's a problem with the state-owned.
Yeah, we've been told that they're paying their state. The city cleans it, the city withholds it, and then we have plumbing problems, so we don't want to.
Well, we will do our best, but we're 2 people, and the red tape is. But let's start with Bartlett.
Yeah, he's first and yours next. Go ahead, Bob.
Are there other communities that may have even had a start on us where we can see the remediation, produce the kind of desired effect that we're heading towards? And as that effect gets actualized, can the ROI be measured, by communities and by the local and state governments and so forth that really do point to that growth in value?
We've been in touch with a South Carolina group that's focused on trees in communities. Rachel D'Entremont is the local represent on that. And that's a great question. I don't know of anybody that has done what we have right now, a public-private partnership with a very narrow focus to initiate this much change where there's over $1.5 million put into the foundation to do so. I don't know that yet, but that's a great idea. I do know that we've looked at Savannah's tree ordinance that's started by private people to make an influence on public initiative. But that's a good point because we can learn from them as well. You've got a question.
I drive by the Carolina Bay probably every day on the way to family pharmacy or whatever.
Yeah.
And those new little live oaks that were planted by the city that on both sides, both on Odell Wheat side and then on the parking lot side. Every time I go by there, I'm disturbed by seeing people park underneath those trees, especially when it's hot.
Yeah.
If the city, who would you tell? I mean, or if you could just put a little something.
Stop. Yeah.
Prevent them from parking on the roofs, and especially when it's been so dry. And the city trucks are the ones, they're part of that problem. That I see the city trucks down there and other utility trucks plus regular folks that are,
Yeah, what she's talking about is one of the biggest problems, root compaction. And again, I've been with Aaron in Oakland Gardens, and he sees his own people driving trucks throughout. And the problem is they go to the same place all the time. And he's had to go there and say, no, look, guys, I know you want to go from A to B. The closest way to bring your equipment, you've got to do this and this because they're driving right by that huge, beautiful loblolly. Again, I hate to pass the buck. It's not Rob and my thing, but the city, it's Lex Kirkland again and Aaron Campbell said, guys, let's follow through with your own people. But we got to keep cars. I mean, parkways are incredible. Right now, I have a rule where you can put two wheels on the parkway, 2 wheels on the road. Otherwise, you get ticketed. We've called people occasionally because it just drives us nuts when mostly it is crews coming to do yard work to pull their whole vehicle up with their trailer right in the middle of the parkway. And that's the worst thing that can happen. We just got to keep people away from doing that. So, give it a shot. Call public safety the next time you see that, or go take a photograph of the license plate and the car and the tree and shoot it to Public Works. We like to do something. The fact that a photograph, especially since we all have these phones, take little pictures. That would be really helpful. Any other questions, folks? Yes, we got a couple. Start.
What is the size of the tree when you replant it, and how long does it take to get that size of a live oak? Let's pick one.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not the planner. We're just the guys that advise them what to do. But I'll try to find that out. Because Aaron, and we paid for this building.
Yeah, when you talked about
And he said he did say, Dacre, from today it's going to take about 6 years to get them big enough to plant.
Oh, that's good.
Now that's the one part I do know. It'll take about 6 years because they're slow growing, as we know. And then they're plantable, replaceable. Now, I don't know the streets, but if you ever look in the paper, every time there is an Arbor Day, the mayor's out there with the city manager and the shovel and the bucket, and there's 2 of them in downtown Aiken where they've got little plaques. This was planted on this year. And it's on one up from Parkville, Richland. Yeah. I forget the cross streets, but it's started. Kathy, question.
You say that people complain when they see the Bartlett trucks or the Collins trucks trying to reduce the damage from state vehicles or whatever. When that's necessary, can you put a sign somewhere close to our vehicles that are trying to help these streets and say, your tax money is trying to save.
Fix what the state did.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's a funny mindset that these workers have. We've gone to these contractors, Aaron and I have. Drive a city vehicle, and you go to somebody contracted by Dominion, and it's like, hey man, come on, can you just go easy on this? Just do this one here. It's really important. And they look at you like we're from another planet. And you just know, number one, they're the low bidder, and they get abuse in every little town they go to. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it's sad. They come in, I gotta get in here now with the least amount of abuse as possible. So what you're talking about though is the remediation that the city does, and something like that would be good. They're not the ones to blame. It's the shoddy job that the low bidders do. I've got one here and then you're up. Yep. We gave money to it. So we gave money to the planting of the trees and the irrigation for those trees. But we didn't have much as far as what it looked like. It was just, hey, we want to contribute some money towards replanting on that big slope and also down to the left. So that was more of a city initiative, so we didn't have too much to do there. Yes, sir.
And there is one of the main area trees that was planted, the first one.
Oh, good. Would you repeat that again, just so everybody can hear that?
One of the main area's trees planted after that new project.
In the new project. Oh, good. So we're going to have a couple of babies. I know there's one up on Marion, one here, one over there.
I just want to say thank you. This is an enormous.
If I may, I want to bring up something just for you to think about and ruminate over the years and with your children. This is something I want you to be aware of. Is Savannah has probably got the best tree plant I've ever seen. That's a good part. It really is. It's big. But like a lot of plans, city and public got a little discombobulated that the city wants control of the trees on your lot. Right. So it's a hard thing to go to the government asking for all the money. They're going to come back with requirements. So I'm very concerned about private property rights that conflict with what the city wants to do. So it's not happening yet, but what Savannah did, and I don't know if they regret it or not, but for the income to offset the cost in Savannah, property owners pay it in their tax bill. They charge about $9 or $10 per property owner. So there's a revenue source that comes in. It's a real good source of funding. They don't have to have public appeals or talk to whatever. They do have good sources coming in. But I'm just kind of worried thinking about getting the city just too involved in the private property issues. But most of us have homes that got some kind of nice tree on it, or multiple trees. And I'm not willing to give that up personally. But a little good and bad news mix. But thank y'all for being here today. And,